Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the CSFL Kickoff Show podcast. And it is that time of the year where we are sitting down and playing the lottery balls and deciding on who is going to have the number one pick in the 2017 CSFL draft and who is going to be picking later on. So, to try and break this down, I've got two guests on the show. We'll bring them in a little while, but I figured it would be a good idea to start off with to maybe just talk through how the draft lottery works in the CSFL, because I appreciate we've had a whole host of new GMs join us at the beginning of this week. So welcome very much to the CSFL. But for those of you who are new, we'll be interested to understand how our draft lottery system works. So the way we tend to do this is we have obviously the teams that don't make the playoffs will go into a draft lottery. So the 20 teams that don't make it, as you can see on the list here, end up in our draft lottery. And the way it works is the team that has the most amount of wins will get one lottery chance, essentially one ticket to try and move up in the draft. And the way we scale it down from there depends on the number of wins. So every win that a team doesn't have, so one less win than the team, like for example the Raiders here, then there's an additional lottery ticket applied to that team, and we essentially group them together. So all the teams who have won 8 games will have the same chance as each other. Same with 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So the idea being is that the teams that obviously have the worst record still have the greatest chance at winning the number one pick. But it does create a little bit of interesting dynamic in the sense that some of the teams who have been competing, maybe just missed out on the playoffs, do have a chance to jump in and maybe land that top pick. So that's how it tends to work in terms of the actual lottery. The caveat to that is that the teams can drop only a maximum of 5 places. So if you are in your position here, you can only drop a maximum of 5 plus your current position to end up there. So whilst there is a chance of moving up, there is also that chance of moving down. But we won't get into a situation where we have the Arizona Cardinals dropping to the 20th pick, for example. So that's how it tends to work. We've been using it for a couple of years now. It does create some interesting dynamics and changes. For those of you who've been around, will have seen the New England Patriots jumping in to get 2 back-to-back number one picks in 2 years, a couple of seasons ago. So it creates some fun dynamics. And to try and break down some of those dynamics and work through possibly what teams need a top pick versus others, what players are maybe going to be around, etc. I've got 2 guests on the show today. First one I'll bring in is the Buffalo Bills GM Toasty, who this time last year was sitting here looking at a Super Bowl, a first Super Bowl entry into the season. Unfortunately, it didn't happen for you this year, Toasty. Still did very well in the playoffs. The team was in great shape, but this time not around You're just waiting for the off season, I imagine. I'm not sure if Toasty's mic has gone on mute there, so we'll come back to him in a minute. Then let's bring in the other guest whilst we're waiting for that. So we've got a second guest on the show today, a new GM who joined us in the beginning of the season, I believe, maybe in the off season as well, and that is the Cleveland Browns GM, the Coolest Jedi. The Coolest Jedi. I'm going to call you Jedi because it's much simpler, but welcome very much to the show. How have you found your first season in the CSFL?
Hi, appreciate it, Fury, for bringing me on. It's been pretty up and down. I'd say I'm having a lot of fun sort of adjusting to things, learning some things, taking tips from people who are a lot more deeper into the game than me. I believe I came around, it was last season, because I was 7-9 that season. And then we had the off season, and this is my first official season, like really tinkering with all the playbooks and all the strategies and things like that. So I didn't have that. I wasn't really too involved with that in my first season because I really didn't know what I was doing. But the off season I spent kind of learning from veterans, asking questions and things like that. So I'm having a lot of fun.
Great. So how's I guess in terms of your off season, you have a vested interest in this draft lottery this year, and I know you've been talking about it on the Discord server. But you're in number 9 here at the moment. I guess what's your thoughts? Are you pretty comfortable to kind of see what happens? Are you dying for that number of a top pick to jump in there? What's your sort of expectation, I guess, going into this draft lottery for the Cleveland Browns?
Yeah, I guess expectations depend. So I guess my lowest expectations would be dropping from 9 to like something like 12 or something like that. That would be sort of like the low ceiling I'd have for like in terms of a low expectation, but a high expectation would be getting the number 1 pick. I feel like if we got that, I can kind of control my entire offseason here. Like that just puts me in such control of who can I trade with, what can I trade for my team, what assets I can grab, what assets I can bring in. But if I have 2 teams in the AFC North here with me as well, who are also in the lottery, and the Steelers and the Bengals, so that my other best scenario would be neither of them get like probably the top 3 picks, and that would be fine with me. Like I would take that. So
yeah, certainly I would agree. I mean, we'll bring Toasty in when he joins us back in a minute to talk about his move from the Bills to the Steelers and his reflections in, because now he does obviously have a very big interest in this draft lottery as well, and we'll see how that pans out. But I guess looking at some of the other teams in here, have you had any thoughts to maybe some of the teams who are sort of, I guess the Cardinals and the Steelers are probably the top 2, and we'll come back to Steelers, but maybe we'll talk about the Cardinals. Maybe there's another team that you feel really needs that little bit of luck, that little bit of just magic to hopefully land a top pick this year.
I think the Bengals are probably the most dangerous team if they land a top pick. I think getting like a franchise quarterback out of either, I know Goff is probably the highest rated one, I believe off like coach grades in the scouting menu. And Wentz is like 3rd, and I think Prescott's 2nd. So getting either one of those 3 quarterbacks, I think for the Bengals would be a big get for the team. I think the team's really well built, and it just really needs that small quarterback to really push them over the edge like a playoff contender. And I think Stewart will do a great job with the quarterback who he can really have control over for a number of years and actually can grow under training under him.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the quarterback list just by names is just interesting this year. I mean, I don't think we've seen a draft since the CSFL started where we've had that many sort of well-known names at quarterback coming in one season. So it'd be very interesting to see how they look actually when we scout them and how they kind of where they land basically. I guess would be fascinating to see, and I guess we'll find out. Well, not too long away now, really, a few weeks or so. It's going to be interesting. Right, so I guess what we'll do then, I think Toasty's having some Wi-Fi issues, so he'll come back and maybe we'll dive in with the Steelers with him in a little bit. But as soon as I say that, he turns up. So let's get him straight back in. Toasty, are you back with us?
Yes, I am. Sorry
Great.
about that.
So that's fine. It's great segue into my next question, really. So we were talking about the draft, and just wanted to get your thoughts. Obviously, the Bills was a disappointing end to the season. Didn't get back to the Super Bowl this year, but you decided to basically up sticks and move to a team that has a joint number 1 odds of landing the number 1 pick this year. So I'd be really interested, I think, to understand your reflections from your time in the Bills and what you're looking in terms of the Steelers going forward.
So in terms for the Steelers, one thing I am gonna try to go away from as much as I can is trading every draft asset up to 2 seasons ahead of time. I'm going to try to stick to trading within that like off-season time frame, and the team that I get, I'll be riding through the regular season.
Yeah, and I guess in terms of your thoughts here for the draft, Jedi's just talked about some of the quarterbacks who are in this draft. You've already got a pretty good quarterback at the moment, and I guess we'll talk about it when the Steelers maybe pick comes up. But interesting your thoughts in terms of that Roethlisberger situation that you've got. Heavy contract associated with him. Be interesting in terms
of Roethlisberger will be a free agent. This was his last season.
Oh, okay. He made franchise tagged. Am I right in thinking that? I think he may have been. So you maybe you're in the market for a new quarterback, and we've talked about a couple of them in this draft. And yeah, it'd be interesting to get your thoughts on that as your pick comes in and see how that goes. But I guess, Toasty, in terms of the other teams, is there any other sort of team in here that you feel is sort of dying for a top pick and really just needs that bit of luck?
I would say either the Jets or even the Browns.
Okay.
They both got pretty good GMs, and I think that top pick would help put them over to the edge.
Yeah, possibly. But obviously, Jedi's here, so talk about the Browns, and we've talked about them, and the Jets obviously bringing in a new GM fairly recently as well. It'll be interesting to see how they do in this draft. But I guess we've talked around the subject enough. Let's just dive straight in and actually get some of these picks selected and find out who is going to land the number one pick for the 2017 CSFL draft. So let me bring up a different screen. I promise you, it's not that exciting. Everyone who's just waiting, it is really not glamorous. Let me just dive straight over. Okay, I'm not sure why that's gone blank. There we go. Right, we are in. So it's not a particularly glamorous screen, but it works. It functions. This is our draft lottery bit of code, basically, that works this out. So you'll see that we've got all of the teams listed here, their number of wins, and we've got a bunch of code in here that we'll just run. So we'll focus mainly down the bottom here, which obviously first things first is it brings up everyone's percentage of landing the number one pick. And as I do for every single CSFL draft lottery we have, I'm going to throw it out to you guys. Who do you think is going to take the number one pick this year? Perhaps we'll start with Jedi, and then Toasty, you can dive in.
Okay.
My guess is going to be on Tampa Bay. I'm going to go Tampa Bay.
Tampa Bay. Okay. And Toasty?
I'm going to say the 49ers. They've been kind of up towards the top of the draft, and I think finally their luck is going to go their way.
Okay. So, should we kick this off then? The number one pick for the 2017 CSFL draft is going to the LA Chargers. So, the Chargers, I believe, have had a bit of rotten luck, actually, if I think it's fair to say, in terms of previous drafts. But they've managed to jump themselves up a little bit here in terms of where they were. I believe, if I'm correct in looking, they were the 8th pick odds this year. What's your reflections, Toasty, on that one?
I think it'll help out the franchise if they are able to land a solid GM, but I think that until you know who that GM is and how they will be performing, you can't really say how much that pick will actually help them.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to see what happens. I guess in terms of the GM, I believe it's been a long-standing GM. Actually, it's been the Eddie Potato has been around for several seasons now. But interesting to see what they do with this pick. Jedi, your thoughts on the Chargers landing the number one pick?
Yeah, I'm really interested in what they do with it because they did pick Derek Carr at quarterback last year, and this quarterback class is pretty deep with like basically off a name value. I guess you can't really tell how good they're going to be until you like actually getting to the scouting stage of them. But off name value alone, those quarterbacks are pretty tempting to pick. So it's going to be interesting to see if they actually decide to take one of those three quarterbacks and relegate Carr to like being a backup, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that's fascinating. I mean, Carr was a bit of a later pickup, I think, last year. He's probably not the type of guy you necessarily would want to be starting at this moment in his career. I think it's fair to say he's got a bit of development he still needs to get into. I think it's just fantastic for the Chargers. I think they've had a bit of rotten luck in the past few seasons in terms of the draft lottery. So it's great to see that the draft gods have decided to award them with the number one pick. So shall we move on to the number two pick and find out what happens here? So in terms of the odds, obviously, everyone who hasn't been selected now, their odds obviously increase slightly. Arizona and Pittsburgh are probably the two that increase the most. So let's find out who has the number 2 selection in the 2017 CSFL draft. It is going to Jacksonville.
Oh,
So the Jacksonville Jaguars have
Ooh.
jumped up massively here, and you can see that you can hear the awes from the audience, from my guests on the show. I mean, whoever that was who oohed, please feel free to dive in with your thoughts.
So Jacksonville is in an interesting position now. I think they can grab whoever they want in this draft and be set for the future, because it was not that long ago that Jacksonville was considered one of the contenders in the AFC South.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with you. I mean, Jacksonville historically in the previous GM had built this defense first, fascinating team. Basically, bit of aging, just a couple of GMs changing now. Kevin has come in and steadied the ship last season. But yeah, I mean, the thing we've always said about Jacksonville, for those of you who maybe are new to the league, is that it's a team that has always struggled in terms of getting good production out of a quarterback. They kind of have been a team that has historically been a question mark as to whether they could actually get Robert Griffin Jr. III actually to be effective in this league, and it kind of hasn't happened. So they've got a real interesting question here in terms of if they do take one of those quarterbacks we've listed with the number 2 pick, maybe Griffin is on his way out. Who knows? But Jacksonville have jumped up to the number 2 pick. Toasty, Jedi, any further reflections on that one at this moment in time, or shall we move on to pick number 3?
I think if you're Jacksonville, you're real happy right now because you were not projected to be this high. I think you're doing some leaps around the house right now. It's a pretty big jump.
I'm sure Kevin is screaming wherever he is at the moment, and with delight. I know I would be if I was in Jacksonville's situation. So let's move on to number 3. So we've obviously got some picks now, increasing. We won't talk necessarily about the odds. Let's just dive straight in and find out who has the number 3 pick in this year's draft. And that is going to Philadelphia. So Philadelphia also jump up from their position.
Yeah, and that's real interesting because Philly wasn't really that bad last year. And this is a real high pick.
Philly's always been that middling team looking for that piece, and now they're most likely going to get that piece.
Yeah, historically been a 8-8 team, borderline 9-7, 7-9, basically most of their CSFL tenure. I think, yeah, going to be fascinating to see what they do with this one, because I mean they've always been, as you guys rightly pointed out, they've always been a team that's probably just missed that one piece to kind of take them over the edge, and that really does bring the National East alive now, with Dallas obviously rejuvenating this year with V Gorilla, and the Giants within Cali just having a great season as well, with obviously Manning getting a older. Maybe he retires this year. Could be a perfect opportunity if Philadelphia get their draft right and bring in that right guy to hopefully take that division. Who knows?
Manning isn't on Philly. Manning's on the Giants.
Yeah, no, that's what I said in terms of the Giants. If Manning retires,
oh, I thought you were talking about the Eagles.
No, just their division. So let's move on to pick number 4. So we've obviously got Arizona, Pittsburgh now. I think this is the last one where they could drop possibly. I think then we start getting some of their auto signs. So let's see who has pick number 4 this year. It's gone to Indianapolis. Wow. Okay. There's been some big jumps here. So Indianapolis was the 11th odds pick to sort of take the number 11. They have jumped up to pick 4. Well, you guys are in this conference. Give us your lowdown of Indianapolis. I mean, new GM coming in, so a bit of an unknown. But grabbing number 4 in the draft is certainly a good way to start a new GM off in the CSFL.
I think they could really. Again, it wasn't one of those teams that were like super terrible, and you can really build off what they had. And I feel like if a 4 pick is like puts you in a lot of leverage. Like you're still in a situation where it all depends on who's picking above you, but also it still gives you the leverage in order to like move up or move down in the draft. And it's just a really valuable position to be in as a GM, I think.
Yeah, I think it's go for it. Jump in.
And I think with Colts, I believe that most of their core is there back from when the other Yeti was GM. So adding this 4th overall pick to that core is going to be big for them trying to jump over the Titans and such.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I honestly don't know what they would do with this pick. I could easily see them trading it for some defense. I could easily see them keeping it and just taking the best playable player. But what a great situation for them to be in. Let's carry on moving forward. Let's get to pick number 5. So obviously that goes to Arizona. They dropped the maximum of 5. And that does obviously mean that Pittsburgh also dropped the maximum of 5. And then we carry on moving forward. Washington obviously dropped the maximum as well, because obviously these teams were in the top 3 selections and they do carry on being bumped down. The Jets bumped down as well. We'll keep moving forward until we get a couple of odds coming up. The Rams obviously bumped down as well to make up for that top 4. And Tampa bumped down as well. So we're getting into a stage now where a lot of the teams are just drawing their maximum now because we've had so many big jumps. I'll just keep going for a second till we get to the next one, which will be the odds. But there is basically several teams now will have dropped because they've basically been lost their selection because Indianapolis, Philadelphia, Jacksonville, and the Chargers have all jumped up so high. So it means that Arizona, Pittsburgh, Washington, the Jets, the Rams, Tampa Bay, and the 49ers all dropped their maximum number. Tough situation to be in, I guess, for those teams. Do either of you guys want to call out any of these teams? Toasty, I'll come back to your reaction for the Steelers at the end, but we'll talk about the other ones to begin with. Any of those that you feel's in a tough situation now?
I feel like if you're a Washington, a Jets, a Rams, a Tampa, or 49ers, you're all pretty upset at this kind of result. Like, it's a big thing to have a big chance at having a top 5, top 6 pick, and you're kind of falling out of that pick because a bunch of other teams leapfrog you. And these teams weren't even that bad, you know. That's the thing that happens with a lottery, in a sense, is that you're not automatically given the first pick just because you lose every game you had or you only win a certain amount of games. With a lottery, you're pretty much put in there with everybody who did pretty poorly and missed the playoffs. So that kind of puts you at the mercy of mathematical chance, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I feel for them. I would say the initial thing I would say would be the first round pick, because it is a 7-round draft. The first round picks, it doesn't necessarily always matter if you're at the top. You might not necessarily get the clear number 1 or number 2 guy that we've always, we've seen is normally maybe been sort of the, in that elite camp. But anywhere in the first round, you can pick up good players. So there we go. Unfortunately, that happens. That's the way the draft lottery works. Toasty, let's move to your reflections for the Steelers who you've taken over this week, dropping the maximum number here. Disappointed or expected, or what's your reaction to that?
Well, to comment on all the other teams dropping, I've been in their shoes. I know how it feels. I believe my 16-0 season, I ended up getting like the 10th overall pick, if I remember correctly. So I know how shitty that feels. But as for the Steelers, I honestly went into this with the mindset that I was going to have the 6th overall pick, and anything more was going to be topping on the cake.
And that's a good mindset to have, I guess, is assume the worst, anything else is a bonus, and kind of go from there. So that does move us on, though, to the 12th pick in the draft, where we are back to the wonderful world of the lottery odds. So we're halfway through now, more or less. Got Cleveland, Atlanta, probably the highest odds with Cincinnati, and then the rest. So let's find out who takes pick number 12 It is going to Cleveland. So Cleveland
Yay.
have retained the pick 12. They've dropped, I believe you dropped a few here, but
Yeah.
Jedi, let's get your thoughts.
Yeah, I dropped like, what is that? 3 spots there. So from 9 where I was projected to be with my odds, but yeah, I mean, I wasn't expecting too much. I didn't expect myself to jump up, and I'm glad Pittsburgh fell because I didn't want to have to deal with like a top 3 pick in Pittsburgh. That's not going to be fun. So I'm glad my prediction of all the AFC North teams dropping has happened because I don't want to have to deal with too much talent coming into the AFC North who are young and under contract for a long number of time. But probably I would say it depends on how scouting goes, but I'd probably like float around the pick really. I don't know. I was looking through the draft list, and there were a lot of guys who are probably going to be taking like top 5, top 6, top 8 who might drop. But last year, people were taken a lot earlier than I expected them to be taken. So a lot of people did drop. So I might just keep this pick and see what happens, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, one of the fascinating things I find about the CSFL and the way that the draft works, the first 3 rounds, because it's live, is that it does feel like a proper draft. I mean, there are guys who are taking higher, guys taking lower. There's trades. I mean, 12's not a bad spot. I mean, I'd say even Pittsburgh's position as well is not a bad spot because you're high enough that you can basically add assets to possibly jump in and land that one guy that you might feel is just the thing that will put you over the top. And likewise, you can just see what happens and plays out above you and react to it. So, yeah, not a terrible situation to be in. Let's carry on moving forward, though. Let's get to pick 13. So that is going to Seattle. So Seattle jumped up a few there, I believe, into pick 13.
Yeah,
had a fantastic season. Actually, they haven't jumped up. They've retained their pick that they were meant to have. So they've jumped up because some teams have fallen. I had a fantastic season this year with Skelter. New GM now. I mean, let's go to Toasty. Your thoughts on Seattle going forward and with this pick?
So with Seattle, they're in an interesting position where they can either add value to their roster and hopefully get farther into the playoffs, or they can just trade this and plug almost whatever hole they believe they have. But then again, with a new GM, they may not perform to the extent that Skelter did.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Jedi, do you have anything to say on Seattle? Or should we carry on moving forward?
I can echo Toasty's thoughts. Like, as a person who was a new GM, it's pretty hard to really take a team that has been seen as pretty had a pretty good season or is seen as pretty well rounded and sort of meld them into being a team that's good again. So Seattle's challenge is obviously that they were dominant in the NFC West, who pretty much littered the lottery board this year. So it's going to be a challenge of retaining that dominance with a new GM, who I think is fairly new to the game. So they're going to have to try to like pick up and get the most out of this roster. But that pick is pretty nice because Minnesota basically gave them that first round pick, and that will help them get some talent they normally wouldn't reach for due to the fact they made the playoffs off of, so.
Yeah, I think it's fair. Seattle, I agree with you guys, can go either way. Move pieces to be possibly a better contender or step away, take the pick, or, deal some other pieces and retool a little bit. They could go either way, I think. Let's move on. So pick 14 obviously falls to Atlanta now because they have fallen the maximum number. So we'll keep going down. We end up with pick 15. So we're now in a situation where Cincinnati and New England and Miami have a fantastic chance of obviously landing this pick. And then we've got the rest. So let's see who lands pick 15. That goes to Miami. So Miami, I believe, were due to have the 16th pick, have jumped up one place here. A team that had a top pick last year, had a better season this year, it's fair to say, but still gaps for improvement. Atlanta, obviously, I've talked extensively about Atlanta before. Basically, a team that's been down the bottom, had a much improved season this year. What's your guys' thoughts on both those teams going forward?
I think if you're Atlanta, you like the fact that you're not towards the top of that sort of lottery odds, not in the fact that you can get good players, but that just means you're improving as the years go on, so you're getting as a better team. So you're obviously not going to be as highly put in those lottery chances. And if you're Miami, you're also pretty happy. I think you were the first overall pick last year, and you're starting to put it together and see that you can make a winning team. You can make a team that can get some wins under its belt. So you're not trying to just see you can get a bet all on the lottery and then kind of build from there. So I think that shows signs of improvement for both teams,
Yeah, great. And Toasty, what's your thoughts on both teams?
So Miami, I have watched extensively for quite a while, and they've kind of been a roller coaster team where they were really good when I joined, and then they dipped down, and then they went back up to being really good. Now they're kind of in the middle again. But adding this pick into it, I feel like they have a decent chance of making the wild card next season, especially with myself stepping away from that division. So I wouldn't actually be surprised to see them not in the lottery next season.
And any thoughts on Atlanta as well?
Atlanta, not really.
There was a moment of pause there. I was expecting a very controlled argument, but yeah, I'll say something about Atlanta. So I mean, I've openly been admitted that I didn't think they were a very good roster. Felt they were down probably a bottom 5 team, and fair play to Justin, he's proved me wrong. And whilst they didn't make the playoffs this year, much improved. I feel like maybe Justin's got a grip of how he wants this team to play now. And I think that's probably the biggest thing to see, how they look going forward, is that they have a style of play now. And because they have that, he can build the pieces around it. And I think that's been the thing that maybe they haven't had previously that's meant they've been a bottom 5 team. So fair play to Atlanta. We'll see what they do with pick 14. So we move on. So Cincinnati obviously now for the maximum 5. Keep going down. That obviously means now that we're down to this pick 17. New England, Chicago, Green Bay, and Oakland are sort of left. We shall see who has pick 17. Let's dive into that, and then we'll have a little bit of a recap on the Cincinnati pick as well. So Chicago has moved in there and taken pick 17. So I'll go to Jedi first. Cincinnati, I think you talked about at the beginning of the show in terms of a team that probably could have done with a bit of lottery luck. Maybe it was that one big piece away from, possibly competing for their division. And then Chicago obviously have jumped in here to grab 17. Let's talk about Cincinnati there. It's a team that we haven't talked about for a while. What's your thoughts then? Obviously they're in your division. You have probably a better perspective on it than I do.
Yeah, I mean, Cincinnati's a pretty good team, and Stewart's a really good GM. So as much as he might try to deny it, but he's a really good GM, and I think Cincinnati is really just a quarterback, like a franchise quarterback away from being one of the best teams in our division and like in the AFC as a whole. So I think it kind of hurts for them to fall this low, but at the same time, I have no doubt that Stewart will make it work because he's just such a good GM and he's got the most out of that roster. And he's done such a great job of building a team that can sort of compete. He's like I think he's the only loss that the Ravens suffered this season in the AFC North. So he definitely knows what he's doing and definitely showing what he can do. So I think Cincinnati would be disappointed, but I don't think there's like a fall from grace or a ruinous season for them to not have a top 3 or top 5 pick.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say about Cincinnati. Tosi, let's move on to Chicago then and get your thoughts on that team. So showed a lot of promise, I believe, probably not last season before. Bit of a sideways step this year, I think it's fair to say, in terms of their performance this year. Got pick 17 now. What's your take on that?
With the Bears, if I'm remembering correctly, started off pretty poorly this season, but towards the last leg of the season, they started to show a little more promise. So, while I believe a top pick would have helped them continue that momentum, I feel like if they attack free agency, they can get farther than they did this season.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they've still got the same pieces there. Maybe tougher schedule this year, possibly because they did so well last year. I'll be interested to see what they do with 17 because they're in my division. But I fully expect them to take another forward step this year. Maybe last year was a bit of a peddling sort of motion. Be interested to see what they do with pick 17. So let's move on. So New England has fallen the maximum, so they pick up pick 18. Sorry, Rizzo. Unfortunately, that lottery luck has definitely run dry in New England. Let's move on. So we've got 2 picks left. I'm just going to quickly run through them, which is Oakland taking pick 19, and then obviously Green Bay taking pick 20. So got 3 teams here to quickly talk about: New England, Oakland, Green Bay. Where would you guys like to start with this one? I'll open the floor up to those 3 teams to talk about.
I'll actually talk about Oakland. I feel like Oakland could be in a very special place this upcoming season, especially if Manning decides he wants to retire this offseason. Because if Manning retires this offseason, having a top pick would have actually been really helpful for them to just continue into the next one. But now there's going to be that period where they might not necessarily have a starting caliber quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, Oakland's a Manning retirement away from having a big backward step, basically. Who knows what's going to happen there? New GM in Rick, I think, came in last season trying to build something. I think they had an electric start and then slowed down a lot in the season. But let's talk about the other 2 teams then. So, Jedi, I'll open up. Would you like to talk about New England or Green Bay?
I'll say New England because I mostly scouted New England when I think we played them in the season. I scouted Green Bay a little bit, but I didn't really go in depth. I went a lot in depth with New England because I was trying to figure out a way how I could win on the road. And I think Rizzo has a really good team, and it's just a product of him trying to put it all together to win. So I don't think this pick being this far down is anything disastrous for the team at all because they're a really good team overall, and adding more talent on top of that just basically would make them even better. But still, they're still a really good team. I still think they could probably win their division now that Toasty's in the AFC North. So I definitely don't think there'll be a problem for New England this upcoming season. So
yeah, I mean, Toasty, do you have anything to say on New England? Obviously, being in that division, you might have better insight into some of their issues and challenges than we have.
New England was about 1 or 2 elite linebackers away from having a playoff season. So while I don't believe that this is disastrous for Rizzo, I think it would have been helpful to have a little bit more lottery luck.
Yeah, I think I've talked about the Patriots to death over the past few seasons, and my reflections haven't really changed in that the roster's talent is there. It's just a case of getting it to work for New England, and then once they get that to work, they should be a good playoff team. I'll switch over and talk a little bit about Green Bay now, given up that they're in my division. I think it's fair to say they've had a bit of a downward step this year, but as we've all seen from Zach's performance with the Saints, pretty expected when that type of GM leaves. Unfortunately, Zima, who's come in and taken over, has obviously had other things going on in his life, getting married and having a newborn. So congratulations to him. So I fully expect Green Bay to be back up there next year. And I think grabbing any lottery pick, be it even number 20, is a fantastic thing for Green Bay in terms of building on the talent that they've already got. So I'm going to be watching with interest to see how they do this offseason and what moves they make, because I fully expect them to be back up there this year. So that kind of brings us to the end of the lottery. I guess, Jedi, any reflections on teams, surprises, shocks, anything that we maybe haven't covered as we've gone through that you might want to just bring to the audience's attention now?
I'd say probably just refocusing on the teams that jumped. I mean, that's just I think it was 4 or 5 teams that jumped up from where they were before and forced a bunch of the teams that were expected to be in that top 5 spot down to like the 6th, 7th, 8th, and such to fall and keep falling. So I think a lot of those jumps, though we already covered them, I just think are the most shocking part of it. Is because those teams weren't bad enough in which they kind of need the top talent, but they're gonna get the top talent because they did jump. So it's gonna make it really interesting and really vary those teams who went from mediocre bad and now they're looking to get like whatever pick of talent they can get to become a good team or even a mediocre team from where they were before. So
yeah, absolutely fair reflections there. And Toasty, any final reflections from yourself?
I think with the jumps, I think New York, both the Jets, just the Jets, it hurt the most, and the LA Rams. They were, when the season started out, they were probably one of the favorites to end up with the top lottery pick, and towards the end of the season, they started to create some momentum and get their roster firing on all cylinders with Teddy Bridgewater. So I feel like a top pick would have been beneficial for their franchise.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I could say to end it really today is say congratulations to the Chargers. It's nice to see a team that's had a bit of unfortunate luck and a bit of challenge going forward in the past couple of seasons jump in and take the number 1 pick. That's always great to see. And, well, we will certainly see what happens when we get to draft time. There no doubt will be trades, moves, players dropping, players going above selection and all that fun chaos happening closer to the time. But for now, we'll close the draft lottery and we'll be back tomorrow to basically present the live Super Bowl. And then we'll be straight into the off-season from next week and seeing what happens then. But Toasty, Jedi, thank you very much for coming on to the draft lottery. Best of luck, both of you, with your off-seasons, with the Steelers and with the Browns. And we'll see what happens over that crazy off-season over the coming weeks.
yeah, glad to be here.